Hey guys, welcome back to the channel Everyday Carry for Everyday Guy. Let me start off by saying holy Santa Claus shit. The TR1 trigger upgrade from Belva Tactical. Those of you who follow me on the channel will know on Thursday I did a mail time where I showed the sort of unboxing of this. I had it installed on Friday, put a good couple of rounds through it. So this is very much a first impressions review, right? It is subject to change, but this is sort of a first impressions review of the TR1 upgrade. I upgraded more than just the trigger. I upgraded the connector, my slide release lever, as well as my mag release. So I'm going to be talking about all of those things. I want to start off with the trigger. The best way I can describe what the TR1 trigger with the 2kg connector feels like is, it feels like what I thought pulling a trigger would feel like before I pulled a Glock trigger. Before I go further, I just want to say YouTube, I'm not going to show how to install these things, and I'm not going to be talking about anything that is not legally purchasable to an average citizen. Okay? So I'm only going to give a opinionated view on things that are legal for people to own. So, what does it feel like? It feels like I said, what I imagine a trigger should feel like before you actually pull the trigger of a Glock. It is, if you think about it this way, right? Imagine your trigger is a graph, and when it's flat here at the bottom, there's no pressure on the trigger. Let's say your finger just resting on it. Just for example, I don't know why, but let's just use this example. So no pressure. Then you take up the pre-travel. So let's say you apply about this much pressure, so your graph rises a bit. Then there's almost like a spike for the shot to break, for you to get past the wall. Okay? With the TR1 trigger and 2kg connector, it's just more, it's nothing, right? You no pressure. It's a more constant increasing pressure, and instead of a spike, it's like a bump. You can still feel it. You know when you're there, right? There. You know when you're there, but it's just a more natural feeling what you imagine a trigger to feel like. Now, guys, the TR1 trigger is a CNC'd mil-spec aluminium trigger made in Italy with a mil-spec aluminium trigger safety. It's not flat, completely flat-faced. It is flat, but it's also beveled around the edges so it fits your finger more comfortably. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's sort of beveled around the edges, so it's flat in front and sort of curved around. It's a very comfortable, natural feeling trigger, and I do like the aluminium trigger safety. It's like you really can feel it more than you feel the polymer trigger safety on your standard Glock trigger. What's really cool as well is inside the trigger is like a little grub screw. Okay, with the provided Allen key, you can adjust the amount of pre-travel. So if you want the same amount of pre-travel as your standard Glock trigger, you can set it, or you can set it to where I have it, where it's just a little bit of pre-travel, little bit, and then break. That is how I like it. And when I was at the range, I adjusted it a bit and I fine-tuned it, and I got it to a point where it's the most natural for me, where I have the amount of control I want with the amount of capability I want. The 2kg connector is a high polished connector. It is slightly lighter. It does make it lighter than your standard Glock trigger. Okay, so it's not like a race gun light where you just like blow on it and the shot breaks. You have to pull the trigger still. You will know you're pulling the trigger. You're not going to be pulling this by mistake. But what it does is it makes the pulling of the trigger a more crisp feeling. There's not a lot of mush, if you understand what I'm saying. Mushiness is like the bane of the existence for gun guys. We want positive feedback from our flashlights, from our weapon lights, from our triggers. We want the most crisp, positive feedback we can get, and you definitely get this from the TR1 trigger. Now, what I also upgraded, like I said, is the connector. 2kg connector. I also upgraded the mag release. So I now have an aluminium extended mag release that is textured. It's so nice. Like The way I describe these upgrades, right? I was always kind of against upgrading the internals, but I thought, let me bite the bullet proverbially and give this a try. And it makes running your firearm like you imagine running your firearm should feel. Okay? Everything just feels so much more natural. That texturing, I really like the texturing on the mag release. The positioning of it, it's not so big that it affects your holsters. You know, sometimes you get that mag releases that are so big that when you draw it, sometimes touches up against the side of your, or the inside of your holster, and you take your first shot and the first shot goes off and then the freaking mag falls out. This doesn't do that. But it is big enough that you know it's there. What's also really cool, nice feature, is it's got the TR1 logo laser etched on the other side. Now guys, these upgrades don't affect Glock's internal safeties. Neither does it affect Glock's trigger safety. You still have all your safeties in place, so I don't want you to be concerned about that. I wouldn't run something that would affect the safety of my ability to run the firearm. I know a lot of people say, you know, with regards to triggers, you can go as light as you want, because at the end of the day, your finger shouldn't be on the trigger if you're not going to pull the trigger. I don't know, I wouldn't say I disagree, but I like the fact that there's a bit of tension and then it breaks. But what I like about it is it's tension that makes sense, right? It's crisp. You know when the shot's going to break, and it's not a ton of pre-travel, and you can adjust the pre-travel. As I said, what I also did was I decided to go ahead and install the extended slide release for some other reason, and it could just be because it's a new spring. I am someone who very often doesn't get slide lock because of the way I grip the pistol. But every single time I ran dry with the extended slide release, I got slide lock, which is really cool, because I just assumed I'm someone who's just going to have to mitigate that by never really knowing when I'm going to get slide lock. But there seems to be quite a lot of consistency with this new extended slide release. But then again, it could just be because the spring is new, and we'll see. Like I said, everything I'm saying here is, excuse me, first impression review. So you can't take this to the bank just yet. This is my first impression review. Now guys, if you want to purchase these, you can buy it online at Belva Tactical. I'll leave them linked down below. If you want to see what it's all about in Cape Town, you can go to Gunnery Guns and Ammo in Johannesburg, Spartan Arms. I believe those are stores that keep them in stock. At this point, I'm really quite impressed with it. I am kind of accurate, right? So I'm not the world's most accurate shooter. I'm not the world's most inaccurate shooter. I've been through phases where I was really bad, and I've been through phases where I was really good, and I'm sort of like leveling out now. But I did immediately notice an increase in my accuracy, especially when firing multiple shots. Those of you who follow me on Instagram, Facebook, I posted a reel on Friday. Excuse me, Friday. That is my first 10 shots with this trigger, right? There was 2 that were slightly offset to the left, but the rest were like in a line. And then I adjusted the trigger a bit, and then it was just like I was shooting groups, you know. It does really give you like an added level of confidence. After you like pull the trigger and you're like, man, it just feels so right. You do it again, it feels right, again, it feels right. It feels exactly the same. It's really intuitive. So I'm not saying I recommend this for you, because we are talking about things that are quite serious now. I quite like it. The review continues. So this is my first impressions review, but it has really made an impression on me. I really quite like it. I'm not telling you to do this, and I'm not recommending it to you. And if you know of an instructor, anyone who disagrees with this, believe them over me, because they are professionals. This is just my personal opinion. Guys, I want to say a huge thanks to Peter from Belva Tactical. I want to say a huge thanks to Martin from City Guns, and a huge thanks as always to Thomas from Paddle Arms for making the range available to me, where I shoot every single week. Guys, if you enjoy this kind of thing, please consider subscribing to my channel. I make an EDC gear-related review every single week. If you have already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing to another EDC channel, because we all need your support right now. That's it, guys. Have a good week. Be safe. Train hard. Cheers. God bless.